Hey, welcome back to another episode of Parker's Pensées. I'm your host, Parker Sedecase, and this is a podcast where we explore fascinating ideas in philosophy, theology, nature, and life with experts in those fields. I'm really excited about this episode. I guess it's going to touch on a lot. We're going to touch on theology and philosophy, nature, and life. So I guess this one's perfect. I'm really, really pumped for it. I have with me C.R. Wiley. We're going to be talking about his book, In the House of Tom Bombadil. And it's a great book. It's short, and so I was like, "Oh, man." C.S. Lewis says, when he sits down to read, he wants to, like, have a meal or something like that. So I was kinda worried, and as I got into it, I was like, "This is rich and deep," and it drew me in, and I'm really excited to get in on it even more. I wanna talk about the cover, but I'll wait for Chris to come in for that. Before I jump in with him, I wanna thank everyone on Patreon. You guys are awesome. You guys are making this happen. If you have benefited from this podcast, if it's your favorite, if it's your top 5, top 10, if it's in there, please consider becoming a Patreon patron. You can support me in the link in the description wherever you're finding this podcast at right now. That would be huge. Everything helps, and that'd be great. There's a bunch of goodies over on Patreon. You can find stickers, mugs, all sorts of good stuff at different levels of support. So please consider supporting me there. You can also leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and a comment. That would be huge. You can also, above and beyond, you can join our Parker's Pensées Penseurs. I don't know why I tried the French in the last word, but it's a Facebook group, and you can find a lot of my guests in there as well. So you can ask them your questions in the Facebook group. It's a good time. We're learning a lot over there. So don't spam the group, and I'll let you in. Awesome. Enough like commodifying and all that good stuff. Let's start the conversation here. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, Parker, great to be with you.
Man, I've been hearing a lot about you for a while, and some of my fans are also your fans from the theology podcast. So they're geeking out right now, seeing the crossover, which I think is great.
That's great.
Yeah. Um, Real quick for those who aren't familiar with you, I already said you're one of the hosts of the theology podcast. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm a pastor. I serve a church here in the Pacific Northwest, right outside of Portland, Oregon, and I'm on the Washington side, so I'm in kind of the Seine side of the Columbia River here.
Yeah.
And anyway, I've been a pastor for a long time. I've been a professor of philosophy. I've been a real estate investor, building contractor. And also you know, have a strong interest in aesthetics, the arts, that kind of stuff. Um, for about 30 plus years, I lived in New England. So I've only been out here in the Pacific Northwest about just a little over a year now.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, that's a little bit of background on me. And then as you noted, I'm part of a podcast with Glenn Sunshine and uh, Tom. And so we're a group of guys that talk a lot about theology and philosophy and the kind of stuff that you talk about here. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've been listening, man. It's been awesome. Um, yeah, I love it. I wanted to talk about your cover here. I'm taking off this little green thing. For those at home, it's an amazing picture of Tom Bombadil. And I asked Chris before this, I said, who was the artist and talking all that. And he's like, yeah, that was me. I just drew that and sent it in. So I mean, it alone, it's awesome. I want to get a print of this and put it up in my office.
oh
It's
wow,
awesome.
great,
He's
great.
got a beautiful handlebar mustache as well.
Yeah.
Um, can,
I
that's
modeled
right.
it on you.
That's great. Can you tell us that story? Like how did that come about? How did your artwork make it to your cover?
Well, I had a dream when I was a kid of being a comic book artist,
Mm,
and I come from a kind of an extended family of artists, some of whom are fairly accomplished, and so that was kind of a world that I just was a part of, and I liked to kind of escape into drawing and stuff as a kid. I was kind of like, I guess, Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes. I was always mentally
yeah,
out to lunch, in school, and
sure.
I was drawing stuff, but. So that was my sort of dream. And anyway, I when I became convinced or had the conviction that I was called into the ministry, I just kind of left that stuff aside and kind of walked away from it. And I didn't draw for about 30 years, and I've just gotten back into it in the last maybe 6 or 7 years.
Hmm.
And been working on some different projects. I'm working on a children's picture book now. But when I was writing this book, I was more or less just kind of doodling, kind of thinking about what's this guy look like. I
Yeah.
wasn't very happy with the brothers Hildebrand and their portrait. And you go on, if you Google Tom Bombadil and you look at all the fan art, it's just horrendous.
That's hilarious. I had that as my background, and I thought, I better change this because this cover is better than all these ones out there.
Well, I mean, I like the Hildebrand rendition of Old Man Willow. That's a
Yeah,
funny
I
one.
liked it too. I switched it out last minute from a Tom Bombadil one.
Well, it would have been okay to have the other one. I'm generally speaking, I have I like what those guys did with Tolkien and their calendars and stuff.
Hmm.
It's just that the Bombadil one didn't quite do it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, so I love it. The book is fantastic. But I thought before we get in on Bombadil, how'd you get into Tolkien and his legendarium in the first place?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a story in itself, and I think a lot of people have their Tolkien conversion moment
Yeah.
stories. So I was a kid. My father was an academic. He was at Washington University in St. Louis, and I remember I was maybe 10 years old. He wasn't really into reading out loud to kids or
Hmm.
to me or my sister, but for some reason he was reading Fellowship of the Ring, and he's just started reading out loud, and it was that point in the Fellowship where they're in the Mines of Moria, and Merry and Pippin are right by that well, if you
Yeah.
remember, and they're
Hmm.
wondering how deep that thing is, and they drop that rock. Pippin drops the rock. I think it's Pippin. And they're listening and listening and listening. And I was right there at the hole with them, listening, wondering how deep it went. And finally, of course, it hits some deep stone, and then it awakens something really bad down below, if you recall.
Yeah.
But it awakened something in me that was really good. And from that point on, I just had this place in my mind that Tolkien had taken possession of,
Hmm.
and I wondered about the story. Years later, I found The Hobbit in the school library and read that, and then went on to Lord of the Rings, and this was in the '70s. And I remember even when the Silmarillion came out in '77, I bought that. I was kind of over my head, at that point, but I read it anyway.
Hmm.
So anyway, for me, ever since, Tolkien has been the measure of a good storyteller, and that's been good and bad, because the bad is that there aren't many people who can measure up to him.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I got into it.
Okay. Oh, that's good. I was really excited when I saw your post on Bombadil on Facebook or something, because I've always had like a hipster love for Bombadil, because my dad read me the books before the movies came out. He's like, "Look, we got to get you proper footing
Right.
here in the books before the movies." So
Right.
we sped read them before they came out when I was a kid, and I remember Tom Bombadil. I remember everyone saying, "Oh, he wasn't in the movie. The movies were good, but they didn't have Tom Bombadil." So I had this hipster love of saying, like, I'm a true fan. I know Bombadil. You guys don't know him, but it wasn't the kind of love that you put on display in this book. So yeah, why this book? Why write a whole book on Bombadil?
Yeah, well, you can think about Bombadil in different ways. Your typical fanboy, fangirl approach is, how does he fit into the legendarium? And they're more interested in the history.
Hmm.
And I have, a passing interest in that. But the more that I grew in my appreciation for kind of the grand sweep of Western thought, many of the questions that are perennially uh, discussed and addressed throughout Western, the Western philosophical tradition, questions related to linguistics and knowing something about what the Inklings were up to. I just had a sense that some things were really significant about Bombadil, and Tolkien was sort of playing out some things in his own thinking with the character. So the more I reflected on him, the more I saw. And it's one of those things where if you like, I remember years ago, I was driving across America, and my wife and I were moving, and I was driving a big Ryder pickup truck. Ryder, like moving truck.
Yeah.
And, I was very conscious of the fact that I was driving this big Ryder truck. And it seemed like everybody else in America was driving the same truck.
Hmm.
I'd look and I saw it everywhere. And then after I was done, I didn't see it ever again. It was on my mind, and because it was on my mind, I could see it. But
Yeah.
because I'm not thinking about that most of the time, I don't see it. So there are things that I've been wondering about, thinking about for a long time. And I don't think I'm reading anything into the story so much as I'm recognizing some things in the story that I would have missed if I didn't spend the time thinking about the questions I've been thinking about.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought of this in a similar fashion to like Michael Ward and C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, and he
Yeah,
gets the Narnia code, and it's because he knows Lewis well. It's because he's got all this background knowledge, and he reads a poem, and he cracks the code. Why is there seven of them? And he sees the seven heavens, and I think he's probably right on that. And I think Lewis even kind of hid that from Tolkien, which was fun.
yeah,
And I thought a similar thing here because a lot of people go, maybe Tom Bombadil was a filler, or he was an important character in Tolkien's grand legendarium, and so he just had to stuff him in. He would have felt bad if he didn't, or something. And I think you have put your finger on something here that Tolkien did think this was an important feature, and a lot of people a lot of people jump on Tolkien's disdain, or I guess it's disdain for allegory, and they say, don't read into stuff. This isn't about World War II. He hates allegory, all this
right.
stuff, and then you make this distinction between applicability and allegory, and you say you can apply Tom Bombadil. Can you lay out the difference for us between allegory and applicability?
Sure. Well, it's something that Tolkien did himself in one of
Mm.
his letters. He's describing, or actually, it's in the foreword, I think, to the second edition of The Lord of the Rings. He was accused of committing the sin of allegory. I think so often that he got sick of hearing that, and he had to say something pretty strong to make sure that people didn't make that accusation anymore. I think that what appalled him about allegory, or at least what made it distasteful to him, is that allegory has a kind of one-to-one correspondence. You think about Pilgrim's Progress. Christian, what does he represent? Duh.
Right, right.
Hopeful, what does he represent? Of course, worldly wise. I mean, you get the idea. So they're
Yeah.
kind of like cardboard standees for particular doctrines. Now, Bunyan does a great job. I mean, if you're going to work in that genre, you can't beat Bunyan.
Yeah.
But it's been done.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. So I think what Tolkien is doing when he makes that distinction between applicability and allegory is that when you're reading an allegory, you're at the mercy of the author.
Mhm.
So there's a kind of domination that the author is exercising over your imagination. Whereas when you're talking about applicability, you've got the freedom to apply what you're reading to this or that or not.
Yeah.
And it really is more the measure of the person. Now, it's not entirely like a Rorschach test or something like that. It's
Mhm.
not just like, there's no actual meaning there. There's a lot of meaning there,
Yeah.
but it's up to the reader to exercise a little, uh, you know, little exercise, powers of observation, um, make connections,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And so, when a reader does that, a reader can actually see things in a work that perhaps weren't even on the mind of the author, but nevertheless, they're there in the story, and the author has to, at a later time, admit they are.
Yeah.
So, for example, Tolkien. I don't recall where I read this, but if I have it correct, if I remember correctly, he was told that it seemed as though the three offices of Christ, prophet, priest, and king, were represented by Gandalf, Frodo, and of course the king, Aragorn.
Yeah.
And Tolkien said, I never thought about that, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
And there has to now, if that is the case, then you really need an understanding of the nature of language that's rooted in a kind of metaphysic, a realist metaphysic, for
Mhm.
that to be true. Now, if you don't accept metaphysics as being a legitimate occupation or preoccupation, if you think that it's just uh, sort of the modern way of looking at things, that this is all just language games and power games and that kind of stuff,
Right.
then there is no justification for seeing something in a work that wasn't either put there by the author or the willful desire of the reader being sort of expressed in an interpretation.
Yeah. Well, I think this reminds me of Jordan Peterson and his hammering on archetypes,
Right.
archetypes. And ironically, I think he is. I don't think he's like a narrative realist. I think that he's a little bit of an existentialist. But yeah, we're bringing our own meaning to reality, and we're forcing order out of this chaos. But I think a lot of his archetypal talk, insofar as it does match up with reality, I think it's because we live in a Christian reality, and you are recognizing the greatest story ever told in various other stories, because you can't. The closer you get to that, the better the story is going to get. And so, the gospel message, the gospel creation, fall, redemption, uh, it reverberates through creation, and so that you're gonna find that in good stories, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, with Peterson and his, discussion of archetypes, he's drawing on Jung, of course. And
Mhm.
with Jung, you're kind of doing kind of depth psychology with regard to the human race.
Right.
So, we might just all be nuts.
That's right. Yeah, the collective unconscious. Yeah.
Right, right. So there's no reality outside of the collective unconscious, to use that way of putting it. Whereas in a realist understanding, there really is something out there. I
Yeah.
think that the radical orthodoxy guys, with their recovery of this, I think it was John Milbank talked about the suspended middle.
Mhm.
This idea of something that's being extended down to us. He's getting at what Plato called the forms, or
Yeah.
Aristotle's referring to as the essences of things, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. One thing that I really, really appreciated with your book is, you don't tie up all the loose ends for us. There's a trend in some Christian authors where we want to wrap everything up, and we got the gospel in there, and so now let's tie everything up nice and good for us, and that's it. And you kind of bring us down deeper into the rabbit trails, and you say, look, there's still you settle, you tie up the loose ends on your own, you figure this stuff out. I'm gonna take you in deeper, or up and in, I guess. But look, I'm not gonna say that Tolkien definitely had this in mind, or definitely had, and I really, really appreciate that. I think that is fair to Tolkien. I think it is a really rich way to read and think about Bombadil. So I was really encouraged by you letting the loose ends remain loose.
Yeah, I don't think that I can do what Michael Ward did with Narnia. I mean,
Mm.
I really do think he has the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
and uh, uh, and when you see, you know, that Planet Narnia argument, um, I don't think you can deny it, because it seems like Lewis was talking about it all the time in all of his stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, how did we miss this? This is one of
Right.
those things.
Totally.
Whereas I think that Tolkien was enigmatic on purpose, and he tells us that because he's trying to get us to sort of have this conversation. I
Yeah.
think I think that's the point. And mysteries in antiquity were not like we understand mysteries today.
Yeah.
Today it's Sherlock Holmes. So I think that those Christian authors who try to tie up all the loose ends and answer every question, they're approaching mysteries the way a modern person
Yeah.
does. It's a puzzle to solve.
Yeah.
Whereas in antiquity, mysterion, which is the word that is translated into sacrament, it makes its journey, in Latin into English, is addressing the hidden sort of reality beneath the surface. So when we're talking about, say, the sacraments, there's something real going on uh, beneath the surface that we can't see. It's a mystery in that sense. So
Yeah.
it's not a mystery that is solved. It's just kind of, it's just a reality that is present, that sometimes you see and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, Chris, I'm trying, I don't want to after I just said I don't like when people wrap everything up. I'm also trying to wrap my head around your book in the House of Tom Bombadil, and one of the key themes that stands out is dominion, um, and dominion without domination, and the ring of power being a force of dominion, and it's really good. It's actually been really edifying for me, and I look out at my yard today, and I was like, Dominion, man, this is cool. I wanna live in a I wanna be like Tom Bombadil in my life. So I was really, really excited for the spring to come. I'm in Chicago, so it's all snowy and terrible, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready for the spring because of your book. I thought maybe we could set up the Dominion conversation with the comparison between the Ring of Power and the ring. I'm gonna botch this, but the ring of is it Gyges? Gyges?
I've always pronounced it Gyges, but I'm not
Gyges.
an authority.
Yeah.
Years ago, I was told that when you're reading ancient languages out loud, just sound like you know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
everybody will believe you.
That's right. Yeah, so I haven't heard too many people say it out loud. That's my problem. I always read it, but yeah, from Glaucon in Plato's Republic, he gives this little quick allegory story, whatever, of a ring that also makes you invisible.
Yeah. Well, I'm confident that Tolkien knew that story.
Sure.
And so I guess my point with bringing that up in the book is just to demonstrate that this isn't an entirely original concept. And there's also, in Republic, Glaucon ties wickedness to that ring as well.
Mm.
So, it's not, again, original with Tolkien to see that, a ring that could make you invisible would make it possible for you to get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but there is a difference. And, with the Ring of Gyges, it just reveals how bad you are, whereas the Ring of Power and Lord of the Rings actually makes you worse.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love that. So I just recently have heard about the Ring of Gyges, and I've read some Plato, but the Republic's not my favorite. So I keep on like starting it, and then I don't get through enough. And I like a lot of other ones, but I got to work through the Republic. So I keep missing it, and people were like, just recently I heard someone talk about this Ring of Gyges, and it's like, oh man, did he rip it off or what? And then so this was really helpful reading yours and saying, look, they're similar, and obviously he had this in mind, but the Ring of Gyges reveals your inner wickedness because we could do whatever we want if we were invisible. And so what do you really want to do? Well, you're showing your wickedness by going in the women's locker room and all sorts of sick stuff. But the Ring of Power is like changing someone who wouldn't do that into someone who would do that.
right.
Um, I thought that was great, and so that sets up like the ring has dominion over you, or it's Sauron exercising dominion over you. Does that sound right? Domination?
Yeah, yeah. What I try to do in my book is make a distinction between dominion and domination.
Mhm.
Domination would be a fallen sort of exercise of dominion. So, and this is where things get to be uh, difficult for us to sort of, um, I guess, parse things out in our own lives. When are we exercising dominion in a way that is in keeping with the powers that have been given to us by the one who has given us dominion, God? And when have we crossed a line and begun to exercise dominion in a fallen way that is wicked and is something that should be condemned?
Yeah.
So in one of the thoughts I had as I was thinking about Bombadil is how marvelously he contrasts with both Sauron and Saruman.
Mhm.
And I focus more on Saruman just because we know more about him.
Yeah.
Um, so we can actually see sort of the after effects of Sauron's fall. I mean Saruman's fall, whereas the fall of Sauron is so lost in time and in the past that you know it's hard for us to appreciate just how he got to be the way he is,
Right.
because even Sauron at one point wasn't Sauron. He was a different sort of creature.
Yeah.
Um, and so anyway, that was something that intrigued me, and I thought that in the course of the story, the fact that Tom is presented to us right up front as the story is getting going, he serves as a foil to the dominion that is being pursued and exercised by the wicked characters. So that was something I tried to play with a little bit in my analysis of his place in the story.
Yeah, well, I think both of them come from the root damus, right? I think you brought that out,
Yeah.
and I think also like your domicile or like your home is it's all
Yeah.
from the same word.
Yeah. And domestic.
Yeah,
So it's a word, that shouldn't bring, you know, to our minds the things that the word domination tends to bring.
yeah, right.
So, we've been given the uh, the powers that we possess as human beings that really do, um, single us out from the other creatures in the world, and we really do have a kind of ring of power that we can't ever sort of rid ourselves of. There's no Mount Doom for us. No,
That's a
I
good
do
point.
think that there are people who try to. I do think there are people who try to abdicate, but I think they're only fooling themselves. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, um, it's just simply a fact.
yeah,
We have the power to do things that no other creature has the power to do in this world. So then the question is, well, how do we exercise that the way we should? Um, and unfortunately, we've got plenty of history to look at that to demonstrate that we often exercise dominion, like Saruman and Sauron.
yeah, yeah. Seriously. Well, this has come in just a perfect time for me reading your book. I'm in a philosophy of technology class,
Mm.
and we're going over Heidegger, and I'm being trained as an analytic philosopher. So reading Heidegger is very hard for me
Well,
from the continental
my
side.
sympathies to you. I'm not. I'm more of a classical guy myself.
Okay, all right, yeah. Well, and that's great too. It's all good stuff. Heidegger talks about challenging forth and what is it? Calling forth, maybe bringing forth, and it's cool because bringing forth is like you're living the biblical guys like Van Hooser will say, like, along the grain of scripture or along the grain of reality. And challenging forth is you're just destroying things just because you need the elements. And so you're completely stripping down a tree for a telephone pole or something like that. Maybe
Oh
that's not
yeah,
such a big
yeah,
deal, but
right.
and I see that as I've been learning this idea of technological domination and determinism, I see it in Tolkien. I see it in
Oh
Lewis.
yeah,
I
yeah,
see it in Star Wars, though they have their own kind of pantheism type weird stuff going on. But the bad guys are the guys who strip everything and make everything into just a hermetically sealed, clean sweep of everything. And the
right,
good guys, are the ones who live in concord with nature. There's some dirt on the floor, or the floors are made of dirt, or something like that.
right. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think when we think about Star Wars or other attempts to kind of get back in touch with what we all kind of know deep down inside is a better way to relate to the created order around us. People turn to the East because they've either not been introduced to the line of thinking that we're getting into here as Christians, or they've come to adopt, or they've come to believe that kind of the excesses of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution can be blamed on the church.
Hmm.
It's sort of like you can't win with these
I
people.
know. I was just thinking that.
Either we have been the obstacle to
Yeah,
human
holding
progress,
everything back because we're Christian. Yeah, right,
or we're completely to blame for global warming.
right.
So anyway, but if you look at the actual story, you'll see, particularly in places like Lewis's Abolition of Man, where he helps you to kind of zero in on this.
Yeah,
Um, what we have with the scientific revolution, and kind of concurrent with that, the technological revolution, because they've really gone hand in glove, is a quest to master the natural world and make it serve
yeah.
human interests. Now, there are certain things about this that are undeniably good.
Mhm.
We know a lot more about, uh, you know, the things that make us sick, things that hurt to harm us. We've learned a lot about how to increase yields with our crops, and all of that stuff's great. But um, even that stuff, we're beginning to see there's a downside.
Yeah,
Even with like antibiotics, wouldn't you know, there is a downside even to those. They're helping, to create super viruses that
yeah,
we won't be able to stop. So, but I guess kind of at the heart of it is, what is up with the scientific revolution? And I think that Lewis does what he does with, like, that hideous strength and the abolition of man, and in many other places, like The Magician's Nephew, he's addressing the scientific revolution and its kind of inner core,
Mhm.
the desire to dominate. And I think that Tolkien's doing very much the same thing with Saruman, particularly.
Yeah.
And there's that marvelous scene in Orthanc, or not marvelous, it wasn't marvelous for Gandalf,
Yeah.
but in terms of what we see there, where you have this dialogue between the two wizards. And that dialogue, I think, is revelatory at different levels.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to talk about that, but I'm kind of running away with this.
No, it's his gold, man. I wrote down a quote that I snagged from your book. Gandalf says to Saruman, "And he that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom."
Yeah.
And some analytic philosopher listening, well, of course you have to break this, and we wouldn't know about the circulatory system. Okay, yeah, yeah, but that's with a corpse. It's there is something here where it's, yeah, you don't bust the thing, you observe the thing, and you see it,
Right.
and it's you don't. This is Lewis's whole thing against vivisection and just shredding apart animals in order
Right.
to study them. It's
Right.
gross. It's dehumanizing. It's depersonalizing to the one doing the vivisection.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely going on in that particular episode. So if you recall, if people are maybe listening to us, maybe haven't read that part of the book, or have only seen the movies. So what you have in that scene is Gandalf's been captured by a Saruman, and Saruman reveals himself as Saruman of many colors. He
Yeah.
used to be Saruman the White, but now he's Saruman of many colors. And Gandalf says, "Well, I liked white better." and then Saruman says, "Well, it's good for a start. It's good, the white cloth can be dyed, the white page can be overwritten." And then he says, "The white light can be broken."
Yeah.
And then uh, Gandalf says, "In which case it's no longer white."
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say what you just said, he who breaks a thing in order to understand it has departed from the path of wisdom. Now, I think that this is a subtle allusion to Newton's experiments with optics, this whole episode.
Hmm.
So many people have identified, those experiments as kind of being the I guess the fullest sort of like a visual expression of what science is up to, getting sort of opening up these hidden realities. So you don't see the spectrum unless you break the light.
Oh yeah.
So there are these hidden, there are these mysteries.
Hmm.
There are these mysteries, and science helps us to access and have insight into those mysteries. So, but what happens is something's broken. Now, where does the breaking stop? If we're talking about light, sure, okay. If we're talking about animals, well, now we're going into some territory that starts to make people uncomfortable. If we're talking about people,
Yeah.
now we all admit that that's too far. But in the history of our, last 500 years or so, we've discovered that's not too far from many people.
Yeah.
They're willing to break other people to get what they want to know, and I think that what we see with Saruman and Gandalf is, Saruman threatens Gandalf not long after that exchange, and essentially says, "We'll find ways to make you talk."
Yeah.
You know, so he's willing to break Gandalf to find out what he wants to know. And I think, but it's all kind of part of a single cloth. It kind of all goes together.
Yeah, and you brought up how that's representative of the knowledge is power type view, and not knowledge power for more knowledge or power for living along the grain of reality type stuff. But yeah, and to there doesn't matter what's really out there. If I have the power, have the knowledge how to use stuff, I can break it down and I can make the world into my image instead of vice versa and living in concord or accord with nature itself.
Yeah, yeah. I think we see something more in the spirit of that with Bombadil for sure.
Hmm.
And so I think Bombadil presents us with, we've got two epistemologies, we've got two paths, we've got two forms or two expressions of wisdom, or two kinds of wisdom.
Yeah.
So, Saruman, he thinks he's pretty wise.
Yeah.
And Gandalf doesn't think so. and it's left to us as the readers to make our judgment. Who's wiser, Gandalf or Saruman, or Bombadil or Saruman? And we get a pretty good sample with Saruman because we see him in different lights and different times. But I think what we're presented with in Bombadil is a different way of knowing, and that's something that interested me as I reflected on him.
Yeah, I don't want to read in too much, but it just seems like there's so much wisdom in Tolkien's universe, which is just fantastic. When you read these characters, it's amazing how rich it is. It's amazing the amount of wisdom and stuff. So I always want to, maybe I want to pull out too much, but you talked about there's morals in the story still. Every story still has morals, even if it's not an allegory.
Right.
And I want to be a sage. I love that idea. I want a white beard. You got a beautiful white beard there. I want that, man. I want to embody that. It's gray hairs are honor to the wise, right? So I want to be a sage, and here we have two sages, and we have one. Don't be this one. Don't be the backstabber. Don't be the user, the abuser, the unloyal. Disloyal. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Turning your back on your friend. Be
Yeah.
like Gandalf. Gandalf was suckered in though too, right? And Radagast was made a fool. So what do we make of the interaction of the wizards?
Yeah, those are excellent thoughts. Well, the name Saruman, if I remember correctly, means man of skill.
Hmm.
So there's a particular, I think, thing that's being alluded to even with the name. He has, we're told by Treebeard, a mind of metal and wheels.
Yeah.
And he wants to know but not be known. I think that's key. He wants to know but not be known. So Treebeard, as he's reflecting on his long relationship with Saruman, he says that he had told Saruman many things that Saruman never would have learned if he hadn't told him.
Right.
But then Treebeard says, but he never returned the favor. He never told me anything that I didn't know. He didn't, tell me anything. And he describes Saruman as a stone wall with windows that are shuttered from the inside.
I loved that. Yeah. So it's not enough that it's a stone wall, but there's windows, and even the windows are shuttered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't want to commune with what you intend to control. Communion is a different kind of knowing. So there's another point, in the story with the hobbits and, Merry and Pippin and Treebeard, where, I think it's Merry, perhaps it's Pippin, says, pardon me, will you tell us what you're about to do to us or with us?
Yeah.
And Treebeard, this is early in their relationship, he says, if you mean do something to you, I won't do anything to you, against your will. But there are some things that we can do together, and that's the spirit of, I think, the wisdom of Treebeard, the wisdom of Bombadil, even the wisdom of Gandalf and Aragorn, all the good characters in the story. If you think about it, if you remember, ask the hobbits permission at different points in the course of the story for certain things. So recall when Aragorn meets the hobbits, Sam and Frodo and Merry and Pippin at the prancing pony and Bree. He asks them for permission to go to lead them through the wilderness. Now think about this. Aragorn knows Frodo has the ring.
Yeah.
And that there are 9 black riders that are out to get that ring from Frodo. If I was in that spot, I would just say, boy, just give me that stupid ring.
Right. Yeah. Seriously.
I'll take it from here.
Yeah.
You don't know what you've gotten yourself into.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, which is astonishing when you think about it. Now, would he maybe have resorted to that as a last resort? I don't know.
Sure.
It's kind of speculation. But I think it's noteworthy that he doesn't do that. And Galadriel and Gandalf and Elrod, they all have the same kind of regard for the kind of the will and the choices that are being made by the weaker characters in the story, the weaker creatures. And I think that's the measure of what I'm getting at here. I think so. Domination and dominion, I think, are in contrast, but I also think control and communion are in
Mm.
contrast in the story. And what we see with the hobbits in Bombadil's house is they are communing with the oldest creature in Middle Earth, the most knowledgeable creature in Middle Earth, and probably, in my conviction, the most powerful creature in Middle Earth.
Yes.
Now, there is a question whether or not he was up to kind of, the challenge of Sauron, and
Yeah.
that Council Elrod, they don't think he is, but um, nevertheless, he's a pretty powerful dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. Um, I think back to Sauron. He his name means man of skill, and I think back to my biblical theology class with D.A. Carson, and he would ask just random trivia about the Bible, just random things like, what's the first thing described of the serpent in the Bible, and he's like, okay, so you got to have those kind of random things down for the quiz. And he was crafty, and that's how it's translated. I think it might be the Hebrew word hakam, which is like wise, but in context, it makes sense to call it crafty. And it's like, Satan using the gifts that God's given him to be crafty instead of to be wise or wisdom, knowledge, understanding. Now he's crafty because he's trying to get at his own thing. And it's the same thing with Saruman. Like, he's this man of skill, and he's been twisted, and he's continually twisted himself to use that skill to make weapons of war, to trick his best friends or his friends into these situations. And it's terrifying to think of that, that the gifts that God's given me, I can use and have used for my own selfishness, for sin, for just wickedness, and just what an abomination of the good gifts that we've been given,
Yeah.
to use, for dominion. And we use that for I keep saying denomination. Maybe that's a Freudian slip or something, man.
That's right. That's right. Maybe that's what those are really up to.
That's right. That's right. Well, so back to Bombadil. You gave this analysis of Bombadil interacting with the ring from Frodo, and I thought it was just fantastic, man. You drew out so much that I didn't get the first couple times reading through. Um, Bombadil doesn't ask Frodo. You mentioned how all these characters more powerful than the hobbits. They ask for permission. Bombadil doesn't ask for permission. He like demands or commands, or can you lead us through the interaction between Bombadil and Frodo in the ring?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a lot of fun. So he just, they're in his house uh, during the day in which there's all that rainfall, and then that evening, they're sitting and talking, and then uh, in almost a mocking way,
Yeah,
he says to Frodo, "Show me the precious ring."
he
Now, when
says
he says
precious. Yeah,
precious, that's right. When he says precious, now we're not told whether or not Frodo told him about Gollum in the course of this, his explaining what they were up to and all that kind of stuff, and why they had to go on this journey. But it's significant nonetheless that here we have Bombadil using that word
yeah.
precious, and in a jocular way, just having a little fun with it. And so immediately, Frodo pulls the ring out without even thinking, takes it off the chain, and just hands it to him.
Mhm.
He's almost surprised himself that he's doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the first thing that Tom does is he takes the ring and he puts it up to his eye, and he looks through it, and it's an alarming sight. The hobbits, or the narrator says, and what comes to my mind when he does that is the eye of Sauron,
Yeah,
seeking the ring, never resting. And he's mocking Sauron at this moment.
yeah. I'd
And
never
then,
caught that until I read that yesterday or something. And I was thinking, and I looked up in my ring, and I was like, it's like in Harry Potter or whatever. You don't he who must not be named, and you use his name, and it's like, what are you doing, man? This is a big deal. You don't just This isn't a flippant thing that you do.
right. So he does that, and then he puts the ring on his little finger, the little finger of his big brown hand.
Mm.
Now, Tolkien, that's exactly the way he puts it. So this is not even, a big enough ring to, put on his
Ah.
thumb or his forefinger or middle finger. Right? It's this little finger, and he
And
holds
it
it up.
grew too, and it grew to fit his pinky. Like, he saw it grow, but it still was just on his pinky. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and what happens is that whenever you see the ring kind of grow, it's an indication that the ring is exercising or is sort of radiating power at that moment.
Mhm.
So it's as though this ring is sort of protesting this treatment.
Yeah.
And so he holds it up and he looks at it, in the candlelight, and then the hobbits are astonished because he didn't disappear. He just kind of, is admiring the ring, and then he takes it and then he flips it up in the air, and then he makes it disappear. I can't remember if he snaps his finger or whatever, but it's just poof, it's gone. And so the ring doesn't make Tom disappear. He makes the ring disappear. And of course, at this point, Frodo's astonished, alarmed. And then like an uncle at Thanksgiving, he just leans over and hands the ring back to Frodo and says, "There you go, boy."
Yeah.
Now, what follows this is, if Frodo's a little miffed, Tom has made light of something that even Gandalf has been,
Yeah.
reluctant to even touch. And so Frodo, to see if it's still the right ring, puts it on his own finger, but also to kind of prove this is a powerful thing you've made fun of.
Yeah.
And then the other hobbits can't see him, and he gets up and he starts walking away. And then Tom just looks right at him and says, "Frodo, where are you going?"
Oh, yeah, that's so good.
He sees him. So, I mean, the mastery that's demonstrated here by Tom through the episode shows us that the ring has no power over him, but he has power over the ring.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that so much. So there's in the house of Tom Bombadil, house, dominion, domain, like all these things going on. The ring of power exerts domination over, and it's not over Tom, and he's able to be flippant about it. And then you get this phrase, "No one can catch old Tom," and you say, "Not even the Lord of the Rings," and it's
Right.
just like I had never caught that until your book, and it's amazing. Like everyone else, Gandalf can't touch it. Galadriel can't. Like no one can touch it, but Tom can, and it brings up this question immediately, which you touch towards the end of the book. Why didn't he just bring the ring himself? And you even lay it out like how it might go down. He's stomping and he's clopping his way all the way up through and throwing it in. And so like, what do you make of that? Why didn't he?
Well, there are different ways to think about it. One is it wouldn't have been a very good story.
Right. Right.
But I do think maybe that what would be lost in a story like that would be the struggle that the rest of us face
Yeah.
with this desire to dominate. So we're all subject to this. We are all tempted to turn other people into our instruments, the means by which we get what we want.
Yeah.
Now, there's always going to be a sense in which, Kant and, people not being a means, but they are, their own ends. And I get that. But at the same time, we're always relying on other people for stuff. So there's a sense in which, we're always means and ends. So it's not like being a means is necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
So I'm a means to my wife's happiness.
Sure.
It's a good thing. Now, if she were diabolical and started, working in ways skillfully to manipulate me, then that would be wicked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the line that we all have to observe in the course of our lives. And I think Tolkien believed that it didn't end with people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Tolkien had a more expansive understanding of how we as human beings are to exercise dominion in the world, and with a kind of love and respect for all created things.
Yeah.
Didn't make him a pacifist. Didn't make him a vegetarian.
I know. I was just thinking, yeah, right. Because there's like a tree hugger way of doing this, and I love my tree hugger friends, but I think you guys are missing out on stuff, and I don't think we should all just drink hemlock and die. And I don't think the world would be a better place. I actually think, invasive species would spread throughout the earth, and there'd be one plant left. There'd be
it'd be kudzu. I don't know if you've ever been down in the South and if you've ever seen kudzu, but that's one of the freakiest things you ever want to look at, where this particular vine just takes over entire, miles of forest and kills everything beneath it.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking up here we got buckthorn, and this stupid, terrible buckthorn. It's like this thin little tree, and it leans on everything, and it's got these giant thorns that'll jab you right in the eye. But if you don't have a manager, I know you don't like that word as much, but if you don't have someone exercising proper dominion over the forest gets unruly, and you get terrible forest fires. All this, I know there's a
Yeah,
debate on how much to burn and stuff like that too.
yeah,
People go wild, but you do need some kind of management of the forest for it to be a healthy forest.
yeah. I think that there is a time for people to intervene. What we see with Tom, what you have with Tom is you have Tom lives between the forest and the barrow dance. So he lives between a uh, a perilous land and tombs, which
Yeah.
is kind of where we all live. We're in this fallen world. In a way, I've often thought of Tom as sort of like an unfallen man in a fallen world. So
Right.
here he is. He's got death behind him. He's got sort of this malicious forest full of man-eating trees
Yeah.
right there, and then he's just skipping along and singing and hanging out with Goldberry.
Yeah. That's right.
He has a great life.
Yeah.
And but this matter of intervention, well, Tom intervenes a couple times in the story. He's not a hippie. He's not just like
Yeah.
whatever. When he catches a tree eating hobbits, he steps in and saves the day. He
Yeah.
delivers the hobbits from the tree. When he sees a barrow wight, which is a ghoul, a ghost, about to kill some hobbits in a tomb, he goes in the tomb and gets them out.
Yeah.
So he's not just a whatever kind of guy. He does exercise his powers of judgment, and I mean that both in terms of his mental faculties judging, but also in terms of his actions judging. He
Yeah.
judges the tree. He judges the barrow wight.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, he does. He does step in to intervene, but he hasn't done so much. He hasn't done so in a domineering way, such that there's no more danger. There's still
Yeah.
danger out there. He hasn't made everything a nice, safe little path that they can get through. He warns them, and he gives them his calling card of sorts in the song that they can sing.
Right.
But yeah, he's not like the domineering father who just latches on and says everything's safe now. He still lets nature be nature. I I wonder also about like the fittingness of the ring bearer. Like I wonder what Tolkien, and it's I think it's probably speculation. Some people have talked about lately people have been saying that Lord of the Rings is not a Christian story, blah blah blah. I'm sure you've seen that going around on Facebook and stuff, but other people Christians will point to a sense of providence, and I think there's more than just a sense of providence going on, but there's like this fittingness that Frodo is the ring bearer, and so it wouldn't be fitting that Tom takes the ring. Gandalf thinks he would forget about the task at hand, and you say you don't agree with you might not agree with Gandalf there, but you'd mentioned how everyone keeps respecting the hobbits. What's the deal with like, hey, that's the guy who has the ring? Well, it could be me. I could take the ring from him. Any of us, people have tried, and they betray him. Why why is there like this respect for Frodo has it, so he's gonna take it?
Well, yeah, something worth reflecting on. I think you when you noted that some people try to take it from, obviously Boromir does,
Right.
and Boromir is not a bad guy, in a lot of ways. He's ambitious, yeah, but I think his ambitions are directed toward a noble cause,
Yeah.
and he does repent in the end. He does see the error of his ways after, you know, he attempted to take the ring. I think um, I think that Tolkien is saying something both about providence, and there are points in the story where, particularly Gandalf, makes that connection, uh, that you were meant to have the ring, and
Mm.
that's a comforting thought, or I can't remember how exactly he puts it, but I also think there's something about the strategy of weakness here. So this is weakness overcoming overwhelming odds.
Yeah.
So, this is what is the purpose of the hobbits in Middle Earth if it isn't this moment?
Right. Right.
They have been brought into existence for this moment,
Yeah.
and they're children of Iluvatar as well. There's some kind of connection to human beings. They're related to us in some mysterious way in the deep past. They're not related to the dwarves. They're not related to the elves. They're related to us, the big people a little bit. When you see them living side by side in Bree, and they've got a
Yeah.
good relationship.
And the Rangers protect the Shire. For some
Right.
reason, I'm still unclear on, but yeah, they're on the outskirts, keeping it safe.
Yeah. So those are the descendants of the House of Anor in the north. These are Numerarians who
Yeah.
protect the Shire. So there is I think, something being said about kind of the genius of, I think, weakness overcoming this dominating spirit. So, when we think about Denethor's madness at the very end of the story, where he's, the steward of Gondor, he has one of the Palantir, and he is actually communicating with Sauron, and as Saruman was.
Yeah.
And we know that he's a pretty formidable personality, uh, and wasn't entirely made a slave to Sauron simply by his interactions with him, but he was driven to despair.
Hmm.
He was driven to despair because Sauron would show him, if you remember, the extent of his might. And Denethor knew what he had. He knew it was no match.
Yeah.
He knew it was just inevitable that Sauron was going to win. But that was the thing that Sauron and Denethor, they were kind of operating at this level of strength meets strength. And then Gandalf introduces, through the hobbits, a whole secret approach to kind of getting behind the defenses of Sauron, literally.
Yeah. Right.
Getting in there through this way of weakness.
Yeah.
Physical weakness. Now, there's Herculean strength with both Frodo and Sam. I mean, they're remarkably powerful personalities, and
Yeah.
their virtue is powerful. But their virtue is also tempered by a kind of humility. They know their limitations,
Yeah.
and they're um, able to acknowledge them without hesitation. It's fun to see Sam self-deprecate all the time.
Yeah.
Sam Gamgee, what are you thinking?
Right.
You're a hobbit.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
kind of thing. You'll never catch up with those guys.
Yeah.
You need to use your head.
Yeah.
Just this kind of thing. And there's something about that humility and realism, and but still dogged determination not to give up, to keep fighting, to do whatever you can, even though the odds are overwhelmingly against you.
Yeah.
That makes Frodo and Sam and even Merry and Pippin so inspiring.
So I have a hard time with this because I see both as right. I see, the wisdom of God is not it's not the wisdom of man, and the it's foolishness to the Greeks, and yes, Christ came, and he emptied himself. He was humble even to the point of a cross. And then we're also called to exert this skilled mastery over creation. And if I'm making a team, I want the most skilled guy. I don't want to pick
Yeah.
the weakling, and so
Right.
often God's like, dude, hey, the way up is down. And I I wonder, you mentioned this about Frodo, and you said Frodo was the right guy. Bilbo and Gandalf thought maybe he was the best of the hobbits, but he had to become the hobbit to throw the ring. He didn't really even throw it in. He got his finger bit off, but he still made this Herculean journey, like you said. And it's the cliche that God doesn't call it qualified, but he qualifies the called type stuff. But also, I see the Apostle Paul. He was the next in line. This dude he goes over his own qualifications, and they're legit. And I wonder if you could help me out with that, because I do have this hard time. I want to be like, whatever my hand finds to do, I want to do with all my might. I want to be an expert in what I do. I want to be an expert husband. I'm a fantastic jujitsu player. I want to be a great philosopher. I want to be a solid elder. But then we also have this, like, the way of weakness, the way of like, hey, look, you're not enough. You're never going to be enough. You need the Holy Spirit. You need God's head. Like, how do we work with both of these things? Do you see my tension here?
Oh yeah, I deal with it all the time myself. I'm with you. I think that the strengths that we possess, the excellencies, so to speak, arete, virtue, I think they're all great, and they're gifts from God.
Yeah.
And so I think that we should hone those skills. We should, be masterful in the best sense of the word, masterful, wherever we find ourselves. So, you know, if you found yourself in a situation where there were a lot of people depending on you to make tough decisions, and their lives were at stake, do you think they really want to hear you say, "Oh, shucks, I don't know much. maybe,
Right.
maybe we should try this. I could be wrong."
Yeah.
So I think that there is a time for, confident action and all of that. And I think that sometimes we can actually use the verses that, we've been referring to about weakness and strength as a kind of excuse for getting out of making tough decisions and
Yeah.
doing the hard things, or actually, acquiring mastery. One of the best ways to keep from failure, in one sense, is to never try, but
Yeah.
that's the sure path to being a failure.
Yeah.
So you've not fooled anybody but yourself. So when it comes to mastery, there's I think that, but I think thinking about God's weakness is stronger than man's strength. Well, what is that actually saying? Well, that's basically saying that um, that God, so to speak, even on a bad day, is way more than you've got, buddy.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do to match him, even when he's doing what he's doing in what appears to be a weak way. When it appears to be weak, what you have is strength being exercised in a way that's very, I guess, skillful,
Yeah.
and almost, this is something I have mixed feelings about talking about. But I actually, when I think about the cross, well, there's actually, medieval thinkers observed this, that the cross was a kind of mousetrap.
Hmm.
It was intended to catch the devil. So it's sort of like Brer Rabbit. You remember the stories Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, Brer Bear?
Mm-mm.
They've kind of fallen out of favor, but these are stories that African American slaves told, and in those stories, it's the clever rabbit that always sort of outsmarts the fox and the bear,
Yeah.
and so the oppressors obviously are the fox and the bear, and so this weak rabbit is supposedly at their mercy, but he
Yeah.
keeps getting, he keeps escaping. He keeps laughing at him. He keeps kind of doing this thing. So there's this marvelous episode where Brer Fox catches Brer Rabbit, and Brer Rabbit says to the fox, he says, "Oh, you know, you can do anything you want to me, but don't throw me in that briar patch. That's the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. If you throw me in that briar patch, it would be the end of my life, and I would be the most miserable death." And anyway, so the fox said, "Oh, you don't like going in that briar patch, eh?" So he throws him in the briar patch, and the rabbit's hopping around and just laughing at him. "I was born in the briar patch." And then the fox gets mad and tries to go get him and gets all cut up. So, like when you think about the the cross in a way, you could say, is weakness, but another way is just saying, "Okay, go ahead and hit me.
Hmm.
You want to.
Yeah.
You really want to kill me, don't you?"
Yeah.
And then the devil says, "Yeah, I got you where I want you." And then he kills him, and
Yeah.
the Lord just laughs and says, "That's exactly what I wanted you to do."
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you've lost everything, chump.
Right. I love that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, like the biggest like self-own or self-touch, like scored a touchdown for the other team or
That's right. That's right.
yeah, I
Right.
think Piper has said like, yeah, it's on the cross, death committed suicide, and he's probably getting that from like Edwards or someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I love that thought. I really do. Um, yeah, it's just
So
it's fantastic.
so
So yeah,
Yeah,
go
so I
ahead.
think the mental sort of the wisdom, kind of the mental mastery to say this will be the strategy that will completely destroy this guy who's got you know what he thinks is all the cards,
Yeah,
and he doesn't think we've got anything,
yeah,
and we're not going to show him our cards. We're just going to beat him.
yeah. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, there's similar thing of like who would have thought that two hobbits are going to, defeat Sauron, this the successor of Malcor and all this stuff. Like
Right, right.
it's not going to happen. But yeah, like how much more embarrassing if Tom Bombadil jumped up and they're like, oh, they're kind of even odds or whatever, but like, yeah, Hobbit, what are you talking about?
Yeah, if Iluvatar wanted to humiliate Sauron, what better way
Yeah,
than say, "I can beat you with two hobbits."
right. Yeah, yeah. That's so good. Everyone go down to the water, and anyone who drinks with their hand, you're going
That's
home,
right.
but the hobbits are left and they're the ones going.
That's right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So there's this I really want to ask you this question because I've been wrestling with it myself, and it's not that big a deal, but it's interesting. So I'm reading Magician's Nephew right now too, and so it's Lewis and Tolkien both talk about in the creation of their worlds, God creating through song,
Yeah, yeah,
and I really like that. And I'm just like, I don't know if I can go full bore on the song because it Genesis 1, John 1, in the beginning was the word, and it's logos or debar. And it's like, yeah, I want to make that connection and say it's singing. But I don't know if biblically if it's warranted or not. Why did they pick song?
yeah. That's a great question. I think that because they're Western men, and there's another thread that they're drawing on, and this comes from Pythagoras.
Okay.
So the idea that we live uh, in a reality that, in some sense, makes music.
Hmm.
And Pythagoras, was the one who helped people see the connection between mathematics and music. And with mathematics, you can see, sort of the surfaces of things and how they relate to each other. And there seems to be a kind of harmony at work, particularly in the cosmology of antiquity with the music of the spheres and so forth. So
Yeah.
I think that that's what they're alluding to when they you know uh, refer to music as being the means by which creation comes into being. And I don't know if you ever saw the musical The Music Man.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Professor Harold Hill is trying to teach someone to sing, and he just says, "Singing is sustained talking."
That's great.
So I'm not sure that the idea that the word and logos, debar, and so forth, and music are necessarily incompatible.
Yeah. Well, and I really like that. I don't know if it's Psalm 23, but God, breathed out the stars, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it just like when you sing and you're exhaling, and it's a fantastic analogy for what's going on. It's not it's not a one-to-one correlation, but it's analogous, such that you can speak literally about God speaking out without speaking univocally in the same way that Tolkien authored, the Legendarium. God authored reality, and he
right.
genuinely. You can say that he is an author. You're not speaking metaphorically. It's not literally false. Literally true. It's just not in the exact same manner. And I think
Yeah,
it fits so well with the fairy stories idea of being sub creators.
yeah, yeah. The reason why we can make anything at all is because we've been made by a maker.
Yeah. Yeah, it just gets me going. I love the thinking about God as the author of reality and his connection to reality, and even the problem of evil and stories and character development, and like,
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that it carries all the way through. So we are characters in a grand story, and God argues through uh, you know reality. So like when it's like God has spoken through the hurricane.
yeah,
In other words, God's judgments uh, are all around us.
yeah,
He's speaking to us. The creation itself, the glory of God is in some sense communicated to us through the world that we have around us, and we all kind of hear it, but some of us suppress it because we don't like the implications.
yeah, yeah. Day to day pours for speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. So in the Magician's Nephew, the uncle, like he can't hear the lion talking because he's got these preconceptions, these presuppositions, and he's suppressing that, and so the animals can't hear him, and he can't hear them. And there's this really cool part where Eslan is he's singing and he's creating the universe, and then all the monkey noises and giraffe noises and everything kind of, now that's the music, but it
Hmm.
it kind of seems like there still is this reverberation of the song underneath.
Yeah,
And I thought about that with the Psalms talking about day to day revealing God's. It's not like God sang and then stepped back or whatever. Like it's
yeah.
still it's still happening, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. The Logos is the one through whom we've come into being and are sustained and being, and for whom all things are made. So there's a sense in which when you dig down, you just, into like kind of the very basis, sort of the basic or sort of fundamental, sort of uh, level of things. You've got, you know, uh, the Word of God is the what holds up all things, and so yeah, I think my friend Nate Wilson talks about how creation ex nihilo is something that's continuing to this very day. It's not like
Hmm.
something that happened in the past. It's
Yeah.
like right now, out of nothing, the entire sort of created order is moment by moment being spoken into being and sustained in its being. So the
Yeah.
creation continues to this very day in that same way out of nothing. You've
Yeah.
in I'm not a physicist, but it does seem like that's kind of the way it goes. You dig down, you drill down, and particles, waves, whatever, quarks, I don't know.
Yeah.
But eventually you get to nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing down there,
Yeah.
at least that can be measured by human instruments.
Yeah, man. And you had a good piece in there too about in the book about natures and the old way of viewing things and the new way of viewing things. I thought that was really helpful as well. Um, Anytime someone talks about the trivium and the quadrivium, it gets me all riled up, gets me all excited. I absolutely love it. I do appreciate, you can tell you got the pastoral instincts of looking at words and saying like, "Hey, what does this mean? Let's look back without stepping on the root fallacy or something like that, which
Right,
which
right.
which was fantastic. I love the trivium, especially because I love to hate when people say that's so trivial or let's not be trivial. It's like, no, no, no. If anything, we need to be trivial here. Let's be
Right, right.
trivial.
Let's play Trivial Pursuit more.
Yeah, right. Because that's for those who don't know, the three. I don't know if they're fundamental, but the first three liberal arts are logic, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and it's all about how we use our words and how we ought to use our words,
Right.
and what follows from our words. And then the quadrivium, I'm always like, yeah. And then there's four others that I don't really know that well because I like the soft sciences a little bit more.
Right, right, right.
What's the quadrivium for those who don't know?
Well, it's mathematics.
Mhm.
And so it begins with arithmetic and then goes on to geometry. And then things get a little weird from a modern point of view. You go from, geometry to really cosmology, um, what we might refer to as physics
Yeah,
today. And then the last of those four is music,
yeah,
which is what really blows people's minds when you actually know physicists, and I've got a number of friends who are physicists, world-class physicists, um, many of them don't have a difficult time seeing that connection at all,
yeah.
because they're seeing, they can perceive harmonies in the created order. And then some of my friends are actually accomplished musicians, so these are guys who work with super colliders and stuff. So, kind of top level guys, and they're
Yeah.
believers. And, so one of the fun things I learned years ago when I was, taking, tests to get into graduate school, I took one particular test and they gave us all the scores for the various disciplines. And it was really, sort of, kind of an apocalypse for me, because what you had is if you were to ask people, so you got the humanities, you got the sciences, you were to ask people, okay, what's the pinnacle? What is the discipline at the top of each of those two branches of knowledge? People would say, well, on the sciences side, it's physics, right? It's the
Hmm.
physicist. And on the humanities side, it's philosophy. Turns out that those were the two highest scores. Those two disciplines, physics and philosophy, were like almost perfectly matched. What was embarrassing was to see what was the scores for the various disciplines going down
Oh yeah.
on either side. And what was really quite disturbing was the very bottom on the humanities was education.
Oh wow.
I
Oh
mean, by a
man.
significant margin. But anyway,
Yeah.
I guess it
That
was all those gals who were like teaching kindergarten or something.
sure.
I'm not trying to pick on the gals. I'm not trying to pick on kindergarten, but it's just, you just think about, what is going on there with these two branches.
Yeah, different skills, right? At that level, it's it's caring for children
Hmm.
in a different way, and it's different set of skills than
Right, right.
yeah, abstract thought or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that you brought that up, and I thought about you had this dichotomy between good spells and bad spells, and my early '90s evangelical upbringing was, "Oh, spells, oh,
Right, right,
yeah,
right,
if it's
right,
Harry Potter, it's evil. I guess we
right.
can go for Lord of the Rings spells and stuff like that." But I've come to think of I have a couple, like, philosophy journals. This is my philosophy notes, and then I have my own and stuff, and I like to reimagine the world, and I like to not talk about it because there's a lot of talk of reimagination in
Mm,
Christian apologetics and stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but
I know what you mean.
I pretend that they're like good spells, that even sometimes you see analytic philosophy and it turns out to look more like math. But you're like, "Look, if this is true, if this does follow, then this is truth. Like, these are true spells. These phrases or these
Right,
arguments,
right.
especially arguments, are getting at reality, and, they have to exist," Lewis says, "because bad spells exist, bad philosophy exists." And so I've
Yeah, yeah.
come to think of myself in that way, and it kinda motivates me. Otherwise, I'm just, like, pretending to be a mathematician when I'm studying analytic philosophy or whatever.
Right,
But,
right.
can you lay out, like, why should we not be, afraid of spells? Like, can you lay out what you mean by spells in the book?
Yeah, well, what I was getting at is something that Tolkien talks about in his essay on fairy stories. He's talking about the nature of language, and he's talking about storytelling as a kind of spell casting.
Yeah.
And then he's the one who makes the connection between, you know, um, spelling. Like, think about it when you say spell, uh, elephant, Johnny, and then the kid begins to spell it. Well, what's happening is it's not a coincidence. Human language is always, sort of an exercise of spell casting in a certain way. The another
Yeah.
question is what are good spells and bad spells? Bad spells are lies. The
Yeah.
best wicked spells are the most believable ones. They're the ones that get closest to the truth,
Yeah.
but deviate in important ways. And then good spells are what you just described. They're in some sense uh, re uh, a recapitulation or a restating of reality, but they're not kind of merely a way of just mimicking reality, because there is room in reality for human beings to subcreate.
Yeah.
So we can bring new things into the world, uh, bec because we have a measure of creative power to do
Yeah.
that. So that's what I think. Uh, a good story is a good spell that's telling the truth and is fresh and new in certain respects, in the sense that there's an author, a human author, that's been involved in telling the story or creating the spell. But it's not a wicked spell, it's not a deception.
Yeah.
So there's that great story, Leaf by Niggle, which is
Mhm.
kind of Tolkien's reflection on this, and in that story, you've got this little character named Niggle, and he's painting a tree, and he's afraid that it's beyond the scope of his skill, and it's just he'll never finish it, and he doesn't finish it,
Yeah.
and in fact, the only thing that survives is one leaf from the tree, and it ends up in a museum, and it's just Leaf by Niggle. And this by the way is what I think. I think that was The Hobbit in Tolkien's mind,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it was
That's
the
good.
only thing that was published in sort of popular fiction from this great legendarium that he was working on.
And it was, The Hobbit is it more of a children's book than the 3, Lord of the Rings books, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got all kinds of fun stuff happening, like the origin of the game of golf is described as, one of Bilbo's ancestors knocking off the head of a goblin, and
Yeah.
and it goes in a hole, and the name of the goblin had the word golf in it in some way. I can't remember the
Okay.
name.
Yeah.
But there are all these fun things that are going on in that story, and then suddenly everything gets kind of serious in Lord of the Rings. It's like,
Seriously. Yeah.
but back to Leaf by Niggle, this tree that Niggle is painting, he dies. I think it's pretty clear in the course of the story. This is definitely an allegory, which is kind of fun to
Oh,
think
yeah,
about.
yeah, you'd mentioned that. I thought that was awesome. Yeah.
But anyway, so then Niggle finds that his tree is there in this land that he eventually arrives at. And then the question is never resolved, or is not even asked. is the tree there because Nagel painted it, or was it always there and Nagel saw it and painted it?
Right.
We're not told.
Yeah.
I actually favor the first explanation, that it's there because he painted it.
Yeah. I like that too. It kind of has the ring of like the kings of the earth bringing their treasures into and it's gold, so it's surviving the trial by fire.
Yeah, I think that's what I think, and it should console us that our works do follow us,
Yeah.
and that God wants us to make things. He wants us to create. It's not we're not overstepping our bounds when we make stuff.
Yeah. I'm so glad to hear you say that. I had like an existential crisis when you were expounding on tree by nagel. I don't like thinking about that because I don't want to be that. I don't want to be spinning my wheels and then have whatever. Even if I had a leaf, that'd be something. At least have a leaf up there. But I'm doing this podcast. You're a fellow podcaster. Like, I don't want to be doing this for nothing. I don't want to die and then the Lord be like, "Well, that was good. You filled out your time. But what you did, only what you did in evangelism on campus. That's the only
Right,
thing that matters." It's like, well, then why didn't
right.
I just do that the whole time? What the heck?
Yeah,
But
and
I
I think
like
a
to
lot.
think, yeah, yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, I think a lot of Christians think in those terms.
Right.
So the only things that will survive the trial by fire are the souls that I've won for Christ, or maybe the gifts I've given to those in need.
Yeah.
Maybe those will also qualify. But beyond that, nothing's got any value. And that particular outlook is why, or is kind of I think a justification for poor work.
Yeah.
um, People use it. Why should I try to develop my talents or skills if it's all just going to burn anyway?
Right. Yeah, and I've heard some some higher ups in a ministry that will not be named, but they said, "Why am I competing for a bigger ash heap than
Yeah,
someone else?" And it's like, well, fire can also refine. It doesn't have to just burn everything up.
yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, so I'm with you. I think we should be we should invest ourselves in uh, you know the labors that we call uh, culture. So like I lived in New England for 30 plus years, and on every town green in New England, you've got this white clapboard church, right? Now, some people will look at those and say, well, there you go. There's an example of wasted time and energy.
Hmm.
Because the people who are in those churches today are not preaching anything that resembles the gospel.
Hmm.
So, but then my retort is, well, the building contradicts the message that is being proclaimed in those churches today, because those churches proclaim that there is a God who transcends human affairs and is to be worshipped, and he will judge.
Yeah.
You can just look at an old white clapboard New England church and infer all of that with the
Yeah.
steeple and all that stuff. The good news is, by the way, that many of those churches, the congregations that sort of drifted into liberalism, have withered and died, and those churches are being reclaimed by gospel preaching congregations all
Wow.
across New England. I can tell you about half a dozen of them
That's
just off the top of
awesome.
my head.
Man, praise God. Ah, that's huge. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about your podcast episodes and the eschaton? Like, will I be able to catch up on your episodes?
I don't know. I mean, that's a sweet thought. Maybe with all of the maybe redacted and all of our errors corrected.
Yeah.
You'll hear like the voice, sort of the vocal change,
Yeah.
and you know that something was corrected.
Yeah.
But I love that idea. I write books. One of the things I try to do with my writing, for example, is as you noted early on, the book on Bombadil isn't terribly long, but none of the other books are either. I
Mm,
I really work hard and kind of thinking about think about it really thoroughly, every word I'm using,
yeah.
and so I may not write a lot of books or very thick books, but I hope that they're books that are worth reading,
Yeah.
and maybe reading again.
Yeah. Well, and you can because it's not just this. It's not going to give you a hernia, but like you said, uh, you can tell. I think that's why I like the pictures of on the cover so much because it's a work of art, and it fits. It fits with the book because you can tell that you chose your words right. You can tell, um, yeah, you're a wordsmith at work, and so I do really appreciate that. And it's again, it's challenging to someone who's studying to be an analytic philosopher. And so,
I wish
I'm
you all
trying
the
to
best.
yeah, thanks. Well, I'm there's the wisdom tradition, and at some points, wisdom and philosophy have been separated, even though the etymology is the love of wisdom. Yeah, they separate, and sometimes you get the continental guys, and you have no clue what the heck they're saying. You get the analytic guys, and they're super clear when they're not using symbols, but they're talking about something that doesn't really matter. And then you get some of the wisdom guys who are just like, "Hey, here's what it is." And you're like, "Well, I don't understand. Like, why? What about this counterexample?" And so, yeah, a goal of mine would be to reunite those. And so I see works like yours as being a work in philosophy. It's whatever you could call it. You call it literary criticism or something like that. But man, I really appreciate what you've done with this book, and I commend it to all my listeners. Go and buy it. Well, if you can get it, because I think it's on like its third printing or something like that.
Yeah, I've been really pleased at how well it's been selling, and sometimes they run out of it on Amazon. I think I've run out of it a few times, but I think they have it, at least as of today. They've got it.
Yeah, yeah. So one of my favorite parts of the book was I think it's like the last footnote, and you just said Tom saved the hobbits from a tree and from a tomb, and you're like, I'm just gonna leave that there for you guys, and so I thought that was awesome. I think that's a good way to end the show here. But Chris, how can people find more of your work if they're interested?
Well, fortunately, crwiley.com wasn't taken, so I was able to get that, and
Nice.
you can find stuff there. I don't update it very much, just like when a book comes out or something that I want to just put up that I, would like people to see. I'd be happy to put this on the links
Awesome.
page.
Yeah.
But so it's not like an active site where I'm blogging or anything. Then, of course, there's the Theology Podcast. I used to blog years ago, but I got hate mail from around the world, and I just kind of decided it wasn't my bag.
That's awesome. Nothing like it, man. That's wild. I love that. Well, so sometimes people will be listening to this podcast from all around the country and all around the world, but sometimes where they can go to the church of one of my guests. Is that something that you feel cool giving out?
Oh
Like
yeah,
where?
sure. I serve a church called Westminster Presbyterian Church. I know a terribly original name,
Yeah.
and it's in Vancouver, Washington.
Okay.
So if somebody wanted to look us up on the internet, you'll be able to find us that way.
Awesome. And just
And
just check on the same side of the river there, right?
yeah, that's right. That's right. And we have folks visit us all the time. Just so folks know, we've got a lot of kids. It's a church that's just, I think the median age of our church, I'm not exaggerating, is like 14.
That's
And
awesome.
so it's like 250 people. So it's like, a lot of little people.
Yeah. That's huge. I love that. Well, awesome, folks. That's going to have to do it for us for now. But Lord willing, we can get Chris back on and talk about some more of his work. This has been Parker's Pensées. And if you like this video, then please give it a like. If you like the audio, please give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. All that good stuff. Please consider supporting on Patreon. Enough commodifying myself here. This has been Parker's Pensées. And as always, all glory